He thought the meeting was routine. Quarterly review. Conference room. 23 people. Cameras on for the international board members. Live feed. Recording. He stood at the front of that room. And he lied. Not a small lie. Not a stretched truth. A constructed, documented, deliberate lie. To 23 people. On a live recorded feed. About a deal that had my name on it. A deal he had taken. Repackaged. Presented as his own. While I sat in the third row. With a folder on my lap. And a USB drive in my pocket. And a decision already made. He finished his slide. He asked if there were any questions. I raised my hand. My name is Reina. 33 years old. Senior analyst at a global consulting firm called Vertex Partners. 7 years of building a reputation in a field where reputation is the only currency that actually compounds. My boss was a man named Richard Coles. Managing director. 15 years at the firm. The kind of presence that fills institutional spaces completely. Confident. Connected. The type of man who had learned early that authority is partly performance and had perfected both. I had worked under Richard for 3 years. And in those 3 years I had learned 2 things about him. He was genuinely intelligent. And he was genuinely comfortable taking things that did not belong to him. Not dramatically. Not in ways that produced incidents. In the quiet institutional way that senior people in certain organizations take things from junior people. Credit. Ideas. Relationships. Opportunities. I had watched him do it to 2 colleagues before me. I told myself I was different. I was not different. I was just next. The Meridian deal had been mine from the beginning. 18 months of work. I had identified the client. A mid-sized infrastructure company looking to restructure their advisory relationships. I had built the relationship. 12 meetings over 8 months. I had developed the proposal. 4 versions. Each one refined based on feedback I had gathered personally. I had closed the preliminary agreement. A signed letter of intent with my signature as the lead analyst. Then Richard had a conversation I was not part of. With the Meridian CEO. A conversation that resulted in a follow-up meeting I was not invited to. A follow-up meeting where the relationship was reframed. Where Richard became the relationship lead. Where my name moved from the front of the proposal to the acknowledgement section. Where 18 months of my work became the foundation of Richard's presentation. He told me it was standard practice. Senior partners lead client relationships. It protects the client. It protects the firm. He said it with the specific reasonableness of someone who has said it before and watched people accept it. I said I understood. I went back to my desk. I opened a new document. I started keeping records. Every email. Every meeting note. Every version of the proposal with its date stamp. Every communication between me and the Meridian team before Richard's conversation. I filed everything. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it. I just knew that I was going to have it. The quarterly board review was scheduled for a Thursday. 2 weeks after Richard's reframing conversation. I was told I would be presenting alongside Richard. Supporting role. Data slides. Background context. While he presented the Meridian deal as a strategic win for his division. I sat in that briefing. I listened to how my 18 months was going to be described. A relationship Richard had been cultivating. A deal Richard had structured. A strategic approach Richard had developed. My name appearing once. In a sentence that described me as part of the analytical support team. I went home that evening. I sat at my kitchen table. I thought about the 2 colleagues before me. I thought about 18 months. I thought about the signed letter of intent. I thought about 12 meetings. I thought about 4 proposal versions. And I thought about 23 people. Cameras on. Live feed. Recording. And I made a decision. Not impulsive. Not emotional. Deliberate. The way all important decisions should be. I want to be honest about. The night before the board meeting. Because there was a version. Of me that was afraid. Not of being wrong. I had the documentation. I was not wrong. Afraid of the consequence. Of raising my hand in that room. Of being the junior analyst who publicly challenged. A managing director. Of what that label would cost me. In an industry where reputation is currency. Being the person who caused a scene at a board meeting. Is a specific kind of career risk. I sat with that fear for a long time. I let it be real. I let it be loud. And then I thought about the two colleagues before me. Both still at the firm. Both in the same position. They had been in when Richard took what was theirs. Still building. Still hoping the next thing would be protected. Still waiting for the institution to correct itself. The institution does not correct itself. I had learned that watching them. The institution continues in the direction it is moving until someone changes the direction. I opened my folder. I reviewed every document. Every email. Every date stamp. Every version. The signed letter of intent with my name. The 12 meeting records. The 4 proposal versions. I put it all on a USB drive. I sent a copy to my personal email. I sent a copy to a secure cloud folder. I printed a clean, organized summary. And I went to bed. I slept better than I expected. I arrived at the office 90 minutes early. I did 3 things before anyone else was at their desk. First, I emailed the board secretary. A professional note requesting that if there were any questions during the Meridian presentation about the analytical foundation of the proposal, I had supporting documentation available for distribution. Standard language. Professional. The kind of email that looks like thoroughness. I connected my laptop to the presentation system. And I prepared a secondary slide deck. Not the data slides Richard had assigned me. A clean timeline. 12 months of documented touch points. With dates. Meeting records. Email headers. Proposal versions with their timestamps. The signed letter of intent at the end. 1 slide for each phase of the work. My name on every one. Third, I called a contact at an industry publication. Not to tip them off. To let them know I was going to be presenting at the Vertex quarterly board review and that there might be something worth following up on. She asked what kind of something. I said the kind that involves documentation and a live feed. She said she would be watching the recording. Then I went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. I straightened my jacket. And I walked into the conference room. Richard presented the Meridian deal for 22 minutes. Confident. Polished. The performance of a man who has given many presentations and has learned exactly how to fill a room. He described the client relationship. His relationship. He described the strategic approach. His approach. He described the deal structure. His structure. He showed a slide with a timeline. His timeline began 8 months ago. The month of his conversation with the Meridian CEO. 18 months of my work. Compressed into 8 months of his narrative. He finished. He asked if there were any questions. I raised my hand. He saw me. Something crossed his face. Fast. Gone before anyone else could read it. He said, "Raina, go ahead." I said, "Thank you. I wanted to offer some additional context on the timeline you just presented. With the board's permission, I have a supplementary slide deck that documents the full development of the Meridian relationship. I think it would be useful for completeness." I looked at the board chair. He nodded. I connected my laptop. My slides appeared on the screen. Slide 1. Month 1. My first contact with Meridian. Dated email header visible. My name in the from field. I heard Richard shift in his seat. Slide 2. Months 2 and 3. Meeting records. My name as lead analyst. Agenda items in my handwriting. Slide 3 through 8. The proposal development. 4 versions. Each with its creation date. Each with my name in the document properties. Slide 9. The signed letter of intent. My signature. Meridian CEO's signature. Date. 18 months ago. 4 months before Richard's first conversation with the client. The room was very quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. The specific quiet of 23 people processing a significant discrepancy between 2 versions of the same story. I said, I wanted to make sure the board had complete visibility into the analytical foundation of the Meridian relationship. I'm happy to provide full documentation to anyone who would like to review it. I looked at the board chair. He was looking at the slide. At the signed letter of intent. At the date. He said, "Richard, can you speak to this timeline discrepancy?" Richard said something. I am not going to tell you exactly what he said because it is less important than what it sounded like. It sounded like a man who had prepared for everything except documentation. The board chair called a break. 15 minutes. during which I distributed the printed summary to every board member, during which Richard did not look at me once, during which the firm's chief operating officer approached me quietly and asked if I had sent the documentation to anyone outside the room. I said I had a copy secured externally. She nodded slowly. He said, "Stay available this afternoon." The CEO called me at 3 p.m. She asked me to come to her office. I sat across from her. She looked at my documentation for a long time. Then he said, "How long have you been keeping records?" I said, "Since the reframing conversation." He said, "Is there more than what you presented today?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I want to see all of it." I gave her everything. Every email. Every meeting record. Every version. She reviewed it over 2 days. On the third day she called me back. He said, "We're restructuring the Meridian account leadership. It will be assigned to you as lead with appropriate senior support. Richard will be moving to a different role within the firm pending a full review of his account management practices." She paused. "I also want to discuss your title and compensation. They don't currently reflect your actual contribution level." I said, "I would appreciate that conversation." He said, "So would I." Richard left the firm 6 weeks later. Not fired publicly. Restructured out. The institutional language for a quiet exit that protects everyone's reputation except the one that deserved to not be protected. The industry publication my contact worked for ran a piece 3 weeks after the board meeting. About documentation practices in consulting. About credit attribution in client relationships. About the specific patterns that occur when institutional seniority is used to absorb junior work. My name was not in it. I had not asked for it to be in it. The piece did not need my name to say what it needed to say. The Meridian account went into its first full year under my leadership. We renewed and expanded the contract. The client CEO sent a note to our CEO. She forwarded it to me. He wrote that working with Reina had been exactly what they had hoped for when the relationship originally began. He remembered. He had always remembered. I am now a principal at Vertex Partners. The title that reflects the actual contribution level. The one that should have existed before a board meeting and a USB drive and a raised hand. I think about that room sometimes. 23 people. Cameras on. Live feed. Recording. And Richard asking if there were any questions. And my hand going up. I was afraid the night before. I want to be clear about that. I was genuinely afraid. But I had the documentation. And I had made the copies. And I had arrived 90 minutes early. And I had prepared the slides. And I had straightened my jacket in the bathroom mirror. And I had walked into that room. And when he asked if there were any questions, I raised my hand. Because documentation without delivery is just filing. And I had not spent 18 months building something to leave it in a folder. I raised my hand. And the room changed.